In this video, we're going to be talking about pretrial diversions, and a pretrial diversion is an agreement with the state where you can get them to dismiss your case. It's oftentimes one of the best outcomes you can get in an Indiana criminal case, and we're going to talk about them and how you may qualify for one. My name is Nathan Vining. I'm a defense attorney here in Indiana, and I represent people in defense cases throughout the state of Indiana. And hopefully by the end of this video, you know more about options you have on how to resolve a case here in Indiana. So ultimately, what is a pretrial diversion agreement? It's an agreement between the prosecutor and the defendant where the prosecutor agrees to drop all charges so long as the defendant completes certain conditions. And those conditions typically are staying out of trouble for a period of 6 to 12 months. Sometimes they may require some community service or some kind of behavior modification course. But ultimately, the goal is to complete those conditions, and then the state will dismiss your case. So when you complete a diversion, the case ends up being dismissed, so there's no conviction on your record, and that's oftentimes the best kind of outcome you can hope for in a criminal case. Here is an example of a pretrial diversion agreement, and here you can see this is for a B misdemeanor, and the conditions, the defendant's agreeing to stay out of trouble for 1 year. They have to pay the fees to the prosecutor's office. Here it's the $334, and ultimately they stay out of trouble. They pay those fees. They stay in contact with any address changes with the prosecutor's office, and the state will then dismiss the case at the end of that period, which the dismissal then results in no conviction on your record, and after 1 year you could expunge any arrest record, so it's as if it didn't happen for all intents and purposes. So not everyone is eligible for a diversion. Oftentimes, if you have had the benefit of a pretrial diversion in the past, the state won't grant you that option again. It's not to say they won't. It is possible, but typically if somebody has had a prior pretrial diversion, it's a lot harder to get a second one. Also, it comes down to the offense. A lot of times, if it's a more severe crime, and you won't be eligible for a diversion, or if you have a lot of criminal history, you also wouldn't be eligible for a diversion. But where they are available, a lot of times for misdemeanor offenses, so things like theft, conversion, sometimes an OWI, criminal recklessness at a misdemeanor level, things like that. Other times they can be eligible for certain level 6 offenses as well. It just depends on your history. So you're going to want to talk to an attorney to see if that kind of thing could be an option in your case. And ultimately, if you enter a diversion, a lot of times the state's going to want you to admit responsibility, so admit to the underlying crime. And once you do that, you would pay the fee, sign the agreement, and enter the diversion program. When it's granted, you would need to check in with the prosecutor's office if that's something that they're wanting you to do from time to time. You would need to stay out of trouble, so if you get convicted or charged with another crime, they could violate you for the diversion. Then you would need to complete the term, so sometimes it may be anger management or certain domestic violence classes, things like that. So you're going to want to do whatever terms are needed to be completed throughout the duration of the diversion. And if you fail to complete the requirements, a lot of times the prosecutor gains that admission. If they violate you, they have the admission for the underlying crime. So if you violate the terms, they will just reopen the case and continue to prosecute it. So then you may end up on probation or having further ramifications if you fail to complete the diversion. And ultimately, you could end up with a conviction if you don't complete the diversion program. So the benefits, ultimately, you avoid the criminal conviction. You can address underlying issues such as anger management issues, things like that, and it protects your future, so you don't have that conviction on your record and the stigma of the criminal offense and having to account for that in the future. So ultimately, if you're charged, pretrial diversion is a good option, an alternative to negotiating a plea agreement that could result in a criminal record. If you need help and you want somebody to look at a criminal case, feel free to give me a call or text me.